Today we have none other than Neil Perry himself in the studio. Neil is considered one of the most influential and leading chefs in Australia, having opened Rockpool in 1989 with his business partner Trish Richards. Rockpool became one of the most recognised restaurants in the world. Last year, Rockpool celebrated its 25th birthday and is still regarded as world-class. a world-class restaurant and one of Sydney's best. Neil is an ambassador to Qantas, developing menus and implementing catering facilities at key ports. He has written 9 cookbooks and is a regular columnist in The Good Weekend and Sydney Morning Herald and The Age papers. Please welcome Neil Perry.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming on onto the podcast, Neil, and really appreciate you joining me today. I must admit, I had a signed book of yours, the Rockpool book, when I was very young, and I actually used that book to try and impress a girl.
I hope it worked.
I think it did, but I was really stupid to not recognize it, maybe. And I think I just ruined that whole thing just because I was an idiot. But no, it certainly was a very surprising gift at the time, and we were both, really into our food at the time. So thank you, once again for coming onto the show. And I guess I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that you had to go through in your life, and where that all started. I read a little bit about where you grew up and where you went to school. So tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Well, I think if I look at my major sort of growing up time, my mother and father are massive influences on me. And particularly looking at the sort of cooking side, my father was just incredibly focused on food and how delicious it was and where it came from. Mm-hmm. So he was a butcher by trade. So we ate amazing meat, and he was a mad keen fisherman. So all of our holidays and a lot of weekends were spent fishing, and so I suppose that's sort of hunting and gathering. And he loved gardening, so we were lucky enough to have a decent plot of land to grow vegetables on, and we had an aviary, so we had birds, but we also had chickens. So my sort of young life was, freshly laid eggs and root vegetables and potatoes out of the ground in winter and spring, and beautiful spring vegetables and summer vegetables off the vine, and so amazingly fresh fish, and we used to go prawning and crabbing and all sorts of stuff. So I didn't realise it until much later on, but that sort of really laid the entire foundation for my focus on seasonality and quality of ingredient, and I guess relationship with farmers and fishermen and guys who grow our beef. We don't really use the Rockpool Barbecue. We don't use suppliers or wholesalers per se. We work directly with the farmers.
Yeah, wow.
And that's the same with the fishermen. We get very little from the market. We work generally directly with the fishermen. And so I think that all started with his major focus on just where everything came from, catching it, growing it. And so that was the kind of platform. He was also incredible at sort of collecting people. I always thought we always had big crowds of people around the house, and he ran a meatwork, so there were Italians and Greeks and Yugoslavians and Spanish people, and so kind of in the 60s eating pickled eggplant and salami and all the sorts of things that I take for granted now, but back in those days was quite unique. And we used to go to Chinese restaurants, and he became great friends with the waiters who were Ken and Jensen. One was studying law, the other was studying accounting. They went on to run their own restaurant, but when we met them, were friends. It was Robert Ho's restaurant that they were working at, the Mandarin, and Robert went on to open the Dixon and become Deputy Lord Mayor of Sydney and worked with the guys at Golden Centre and Barbecue King. And Ken and Jensen opened the Shanghai Village, and they had their Chinese restaurant for a long time. So the reason I talk about that is we had a lot of Chinese influence when we were younger, going to Chinese New Year celebrations or weddings, they come to our house or we go to their place and we'd eat some pretty amazing food, and not the sort of stuff that you're eating in Chinese restaurants in the 60s. So that was a pretty extraordinary influence on my food once, from 1984 when I decided to, integrate all the things I loved, not just cook French food. That was, Chinese and Vietnamese and all the things that I'd sort of eaten in Australia that I loved. And the other major influence was my mother, and I suppose it was not so much in a food sense, although she was a pretty good cook. I still remember, great steak and kidney pie, fantastic pavlova, fantastic apple pie. She'd do the roast and do all the really exotic and fun things.
Sure.
But she was kind of the matriarch of the family, and she, at any one time in our house, we always seemed to have nephews or nieces or cousins staying because there were family issues or whatever, and Mum would always be the one looking after the family. And so we grew up with kind of always extended people around. And so I always thought that she created an incredible loving environment, and I think care was the most important thing that she put into everything. And so my life as a chef was probably most influenced by my father, but my life as a restaurateur was really influenced by her, because my whole Rockpool care philosophy came really from my mother. So that whole idea of caring for everything that you do, when I wanted the restaurant to have a very strong focus, we sort of created an idea that we knew what we were doing and why we were doing it, and the why was really about creating great memories. So for us, it was about taking somebody, immersing them in the experience and having them walk away and think, wow, I just can't wait to either get back there or to tell a friend. Sure. So that whole idea of creating memories was what sort of Rockpool was founded on. And sort of to do that, we really wanted to have something that the staff could sort of hang on to very simply. And so care was great because it sort of manifests itself through all the various parts of the business. So we had to care about our suppliers and look after all the beautiful products, because they were the ones who were looking after it for us. And so we had to pay incredible respect when it came. We wanted the best ingredients in the country. So all of that takes enormous effort from the person who's committed to growing or fishing or supplying it. And then had to really care about the place that we had, our restaurant, so making sure that it was in perfect condition every day for the first guest to walk in, that we're looking after it so that 10 years it was as beautiful as it was year one. That was important. Caring for each other was kind of the linchpin really of it, because I started front of house, went back of house, and when I opened Rockpool, I was in the kitchen, but I very much viewed it as a restaurateur, and I wanted the front and back of house never to be in this sort of us and them situation. So caring for each other and making sure we were ready each day, supporting each other, having each other's back was really important. And then caring about community. So we've been very focused on philanthropy, and any time we can do something that will help somebody in need is something that we've focused on, and I try to get the staff to understand that. And then it's really caring about the environment. So, really from the time that I got involved in the restaurant business, I've always been concerned about where things came from and the impact on the environment and the impact on the animal or the fish or the vegetable or whatever that the growing has. So I think that probably came from Dad, obviously seeing things grown, fished, and having been in cattle yards and farms around Australia as a young person. I sort of really got to understand those that really cared about their animals and those that didn't. So that was really the fundamental sort of philosophy that drove the entire restaurant. And because Mum really created that. I think that's those two people are, almost without them. I mean, it's easy to say because without your parents you wouldn't be, but I think they actually influenced my whole philosophy in life so strongly that I'm the person I am today because of them.
Yeah. I mean, you had a fairly large family, right?
Yeah.
You were the youngest of 7.
Yeah, bit Brady Bunch kind of. So Dad had 4, Mum had 2, and I was the only child of the union, so I was related to everybody.
Sure.
And there was a lot of kids around growing up. My brothers were a bit older than me, so they kind of left home when I was with my 2 sisters, and the youngest brother lived with us for a while, but we were always close, and the family's always sort of been sort of fairly close, and because like I said, my sisters, my mum's sister, Trish, my cousin, who's her daughter, my mother's niece, I suppose.
Sure.
Really kind of grew up part of her life with us, and she was really close. And so when we went into business together, 30 whatever years ago, 31, 2 years ago now, it just seemed very natural because we were, cousins, but we were more than that. We'd actually, lived together at home. We flattered together, and we were really tight, and we still are. And she's one of the people in the world that I trust the most, and it's been really influential on me growing and being the kind of business person that I am.
Now, do you take after your father or your mother in terms of your, your willpower and your stubbornness?
Probably a bit of both, really. I think they both had really strong personalities. I think there was a kind of a real partnership there. Dad was a bit older than Mum, but she was feisty, that's for sure. And I think they had a real, great love for each other and a great partnership where there was kind of a mutual respect.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons why, and then going into the restaurant industry where, it's very multicultural. Women have as much opportunity as men. Doesn't matter if you're straight, gay, black, white, religion. There's just this incredible melting pot in the industry, but I think that that sort of, I guess, even-handedness between gender that I always feel probably came from them having a really good relationship. I don't think my dad ever tried to dominate my mother or vice versa. And so when I've worked with people, I don't see a man or a woman or a what. I just see somebody who can do a great job and
or
who
not.
can inspire or not do a great job. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. I mean, the reason I kind of brought that up is obviously you went to, the famous story is that you went to Newton.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And they didn't like the fact that you grew your hair out?
Well, I was at the end of year 4, which is what the year 10 did the school certificate. And we were going into in those days, year 11 started at year 11. It didn't start sort of the term before.
Sure.
So after doing the school certificate, you really had about 6 weeks left of school for 4 weeks of school. And it just got to the point where you're kind of growing your hair for the holidays, the school sergeant came down and said, with about a week to go, come on, go, you got to head off to the hairdresser, get a haircut, I want to see you straight after, short back and sides.
Yeah.
And, I just sort of, and I don't ask me because I don't know why I've got such an attachment to having long hair, but I just got on the train and went home and said to Mum, hey, I'm not going back to school. So I ended up going to Drummoyne High for year 5 and 6, which was, interesting because it was a public school and I'd been in private school for most of my life. So that was a life's lesson in itself. And I didn't get my hair cut until I left school, actually, for another 2 years.
Wow.
So,
so you once had short hair?
Oh, I had short hair in. I just got it cut. So when I left school, I never got it cut short again.
Wow. You know that, I'm sure you do, there was a bounty on your ponytail for a while from some of the chefs.
Oh, really? No, I cut it for charity once.
Fantastic.
At a Starlight dinner.
Yeah.
Thomas Keller held my head and...
That's right.
and Heston Blumenthal cut the end off my ponytail.
How funny! I mean, that's a great story of over something like hair. You've just said no, I'm not doing this.
Yeah,
and that would sort of later on, that's a kind of a glimpse on your career as such throughout your younger days. I read, I'm not sure if this is true, but it sounds true, that you once refused to serve Kerry Packer.
Well, no, it wasn't I refused. I refused to sell, to do a well-done steak.
With tomato sauce.
Yeah, I think, at 26, that was probably not the best idea ever. If I thought about it now, I probably would have said, as I do, customers are always right. They can have whatever they want. But, look, and it's interesting because I ended up doing quite a lot of stuff with Kerry later down the track, cooking at their family compound and doing the really big, I think it was about 97, we did a 20-year reunion of the 77 World Series cricket, which was fantastic at the Channel 9 studio. So I did the dinner there, which was brilliant. So, I love cricket, doing cricket tragic. So to have all those amazing cricketers that you grew up watching through the 70s and 80s and all those amazing West Indians, and they were all there. Yeah. So he obviously forgave me, and James has done a lot of work with me as well.
Of course, yeah. I think the point I was making there is that you always kind of stuck to what you believed in at the time.
Yeah, I think that's important in life to have conviction, and that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to change your mind or take the available data and go, but I wasn't right, or I almost, I need to go in a slightly different direction. And I think you should always, recalibrate yourself from time to time to make sure that you've got all the available information, because sometimes you make decisions on what you know around you, and that might not be everything that's, could be available to you. So I don't want to kind of, be stubborn, but I do want to actually be decisive and make decisions, because there's nothing worse than being in an environment where your leader is not being decisive and giving you direction. And that's not to say again that we can't have discussions about it. And I'm not the sort of person who leads with my way or the highway. So I don't mind, taking in the talent around me. I think it's probably one of the reasons why I've got to the point that I've gotten to now is working really well with a whole lot of people that are probably, much better than me, but guiding them and helping them get the best out of themselves and therefore, helping my business grow.
Absolutely.
So I always think that anyone who doesn't take the smartest people in the room and try to get them to work for them is making a massive mistake.
Totally.
Yeah. There's a lot of chefs who will kind of jump in a room and go, like, this is the only way something can be done. And, of course, the truth is very far from that.
And you, of course, started your, hospitality, as you said earlier, experience, career at the front of house, which is very very different to a lot of chefs who've always, kind of
done the apprenticeship.
They've done the apprenticeship and then gone through the back of house. And as you said, you do get this front of house versus the back of house mentality.
Yeah.
Right. So, when you, that obviously gave you, some really good insights to how you wanted to run your business later on. But, in the day and age of, I guess, celebrity chefs and, Master Chef and all the, chefs are essentially superstars at the moment. What was it like when you first started? Because that's a very different time to now, And back then you really had to earn your stripes.
Yeah, well, it was sort of the start of the wave of what was going on around the world. If I think about about 1982 when I started cooking. And before that, I loved food, so I was always cooking to dinner parties like you were for your girlfriend. But but it sounds like I was maybe more successful at it than you.
Yeah, I was.
But I was cooking, I bought Michel Gerard and the Time Life entire series and Paul Bocuse and Thrago Brothers and all the fantastic superstars of France of the late 70s, the pack that were really responsible for, Nouvelle cuisine at the time. And I started cooking, from those books and Freddie Geraday in Switzerland. But those guys were superstars in those countries.
Sure.
And around about that time, there were guys like, Charlie Trotter popping up in America, Paul Prudhomme, Alice Waters in Jeremiah Tower in California. And there was certainly some momentum coming. But when I was cooking in 82, 83, and sort of the end of 82 is when I started at Barrenjoey House as the head chef. So that was my first time as sort of running the kitchen and being responsible for the output with my name attached to it. And then, that was when people kind of respected restaurants and chefs were, certainly on the way up in the standings. But there wasn't the fierce media attention. It was very focused. So it was the, Tuesday Herald and the Gourmet Traveller and the Vogue Entertaining were the, the three places probably where people mentioned you. Like, there was nothing going at all on mainstream free-to-air TV as far as food was concerned, but nothing serious. And the fascination with media was kind of driven a little bit by Australian food magazines and things, because our photography was so great, the lights so amazing in this country. I think the chefs were cooking some incredible food. So I started at the end of 82, but what happened very quickly, I was just very lucky. Leo Schofield came up and gave me an amazing review and said the kid's a star, and gave the 2 hats, which was incredible, 17 out of 20. And it sort of all started from there. Great review from Joan Campbell, and then Leo did a sort of expose of myself and a few other young chefs in Mode magazine, I think it was back in the day, and then Vogue Entertaining wanted to do something, and then so the momentum started to really grow very quickly. And in the ensuing sort of 5-6 years, it really, the attention of what was going on around the country really grew on food. And restaurants started to open and be taken seriously, and there was enough good restaurants that we started talking to suppliers and get great food. But back in the 80s, it was a very different experience to it is now, and you have to probably work a bit harder and longer at it. But I think the thing that I was lucky, I went to France in 84, had the most fantastic sort of 21 days where I put on about 8 kilos and ate foie gras and drink champagne and ate in sort of 16 3-star restaurants in 21 days.
You can't do that now. You have to book none.
Well, I can't do it. My body, it's like I used to eat 2-3-star restaurants in a day.
Oh, wow.
I can do one a week now. It takes me that long to get over it, but so rich.
Yeah.
But I came back and I was just thinking how amazing the food was, but the fact that they were French people living in France cooking French food made perfect sense. But I was at Barrenjoey House out of Palm Beach in Sydney, and why was I cooking, French provincial food? So it made me think a lot about Australia and its multiculturalism and the food that I really love to eat, and the fact that, my dad sort of pushed me off in a kind of Asian direction fairly young in life. So I started bringing that over. And there's probably myself and Chong Lu and Philip Searle, Christine Manfield, we were all kind of doing the same thing. And I suppose when I opened Rockpool, Blue Water Grill was first in 86, and that was a very Asian-orientated seafood grill. People still talk about that place. We had a conversation about it last week with some customers, and that was sort of 86. That's quite a long time ago.
And that place had a lot of Asian influences in terms of the sauces. You had like Korean influence.
Yeah.
You had,
and it was really interesting that because I only had a small grill and a 4-burner stove and a deep fryer, tiny kitchen. There were only 4 of us. We were doing 300 covers the night. So
Wow, so very different to Jerry House.
Yeah, very different. So it was more like when I went from Rockpool Bar and Grill. So by virtue of the fact that I just had to be so fast, we did a lot of dressings and simple sauces, and that were very Asian flavoured, like som tam type sort of salads and salsas like mango and chili and sweet sesame and all this sort of thing. And it would literally be all the fish off the grill, and then you'd line it up, do all the thing, and send it out, and then another load of fish on the grill, and then send it out. So it was pretty crazy. So sort of by the design was to make it fast, but it actually made it very fresh and approachable, and people really loved it.
Was there a transition? Oh, because what I mean by that is, was there a big learning curve from going from sit down dining to all of a sudden you're like,
No, it was. I mean, we really worked our asses off. In those days, it was massive, and that was when John Sussman was working with me. He's very famous for seafood in Australia, and he and I started bringing in fish direct from fishermen out of South Australia and Tasmania, and I built a room at the back of the restaurant so that everything came in and under rigger, dry filleted. So the quality of the seafood for that era was just unsurpassed. And then by the time I opened Rockpool, I sort of wanted to take all of those wild, fast Asian flavours that I love so much and people love so much, and really refine it and make it fine dining. I mean, I wanted to make it the best, one of the best dining rooms in Australia. Therefore, I wanted it to be world class. And then it was nice because, quite a few people then said, "Oh, you're like the godfather of Australian cuisine." So it made a big splash in '89 and right through the '90s and into 2000s. So it was sort of at the forefront of that whole movement towards Australian identity and our multiculturalism, and we trained a lot of great chefs, but also a lot of fantastic front of house people and sommeliers and managers, and people have gone on to become restaurateurs and so forth. So it's sort of gratifying looking back and seeing a legacy of great people surrounding you.
Totally. I mean, when we first opened the grounds in 2012, I think we had half of the old Rockpool staff at the venue. Yeah. Just going back to when you first opened up Blue Water Grill.
Yeah.
Well, was that difficult from going from a chef that, from a fine dining chef, then obviously to a high volume place, but also being, in charge of it. Was there a big learning curve?
No, because I'd managed restaurants before. So, from I was an assistant manager in 1977 at Sales at McMahon's Point. And so I worked there for several years, and then at Rose Bay and then at Bay's Pavilion, and so or when it was called Misha's, actually.
Misha's.
And
my father was the dishwasher there.
Oh, really? Fantastic. It was a great restaurant. So I was doing wages, doing ordering.
Wow.
I was actually, because I knew through my father a lot about fish, I used to actually buy a lot of the fish for the restaurant 3 days a week and bring it to the restaurant, and I was managing staff, and so really it kind of just was a natural progression. The big issue was just the volume. We were so busy, sort of right off the bat. We sort of had 1 week where we settled in, and then Leo wrote us up, and then it was just crazy from there. And it was just, I think it was like 3 consecutive Sundays. I'd run out of fish. We'd close a little bit earlier because we didn't really close. We just went from midday through to 10 at night. People would come off the beach eating all weekend, and we had a massive big bar downstairs where people would wait. So that was kind of like, Mai Tais, Long Island iced teas, all that crazy stuff going on.
Yeah. And so, of course, you then later on opened Rockpool on the back of that.
Yeah.
And not long after you opened Rockpool, there was the recession that we had to have.
Yeah, that was handy. Yeah. One of the big issues there was nearly 20% interest rates.
That's
So
crazy.
So we borrowed, $1.8 million to open the restaurant, which you take it in terms of 30 years ago, that was a big spend.
Lot of money, yeah.
So, when you do that and your first year's interest bill's like $350,000, it takes a long time to jump over that. So it was a struggle. And, but, it kind of, Trish was fantastic at managing the finances and keeping us alive, and that restaurant, was powering through the 90s and went on to win, kind of best new restaurant, best restaurant several times, Gourmet Traveller best restaurant 5 times, so 3 hats for most of its life. All the accolades were there, and of course, in the early, it was quite bizarre, but quite gratifying as well. When in 2002, Scott Bowles rang me and said, "Hey, do you know anything about this top 50 restaurants in the world? You're number 4." And I had no idea. But one of the things that was really nice about that is, we started with the philosophy of create great memories, and so we created enough amazing memories for people around the world that when they said, name your 5 best dining experiences around the world, that enough people around the world said Rockpool to make us number 4 in the world. So it was pretty amazing, extraordinary.
Yeah, I think that that philosophy that you have is really important, and a lot of restaurateurs and business owners don't have that. They go into hospitality not thinking about what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
I mean, you as well, as well as anyone, that it's not just about the food and the beverage and the service.
Yeah,
that's just that's kind of the basics to be even in the game.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting, because you like, the reality of it is, I've had sort of my ass handed to me a couple of times in the 90s by thinking that great food, great service, and great wine was going to be enough, and when you pick the wrong location, you really, it hurts. So location's everything, and sometimes it's really difficult to know what the right location is. You can do all the numbers on it, you can do anything. I always remember Brazewater Brasserie being like the busiest restaurant in Sydney in the very early 80s. Yeah. And then Greg Doyle opening on the same street, Bayswater Road, just 5 doors down, and just a total failure. And it's just that extraordinary thing about just a person won't cross the road, or it's too far, or whatever it might be. But I think what you've got to do is always make sure you look at all the things that happen to you, because you won't bat at 100. There's no way everyone has 100% success rate. Or if you do, you're the luckiest person in the world. So every time you have a failure, you just got to make sure that you learn 10 times more than you do off any triumph that you have. Because it's a really good kick in the guts, but it's great for a reason, because it sort of sobers you up and makes you realise you have to rethink every step. What went wrong? How can I possibly not have this happen again? And how can I grow through the experience? So if you don't learn from your failures, you're going to get your head chopped off at some stage.
Yeah, totally. And you're right, when you certainly do learn a lot more when you fail. We went through this weird phase where, we didn't understand why we were so popular and so busy. And so we actually had to sit down and really evaluate, okay, what are we doing right?
Right, yeah.
Right? And so we can do more of that.
Yeah.
And why are we getting so many people through the door? Yeah. So, it was a bit weird for us, because we wanted to make sure you kept on going.
Yeah.
Just going back to the early 90s, when Rockpool was just open and you went through that recession, and of course your reputation at the time and your successes meant that you could trade your way through that. But I'm sure you've seen some carnage on the street during that period.
Yeah, absolutely.
And did it make you kind of like appreciate the situation you were in at the time, or?
Yeah, look, I think when you see people not being able to get jobs and people genuinely struggle, I mean, it's hard for people to kind of understand what a recession like that is like. But when 10% of the workforce is out of a job, it's difficult. And when people stop spending and businesses are really focused on cutting costs and it really sucks confidence out of the economy. That's the big issue. So you've really got to just go back to the basics of what you do really well, do it to the best of your ability, and make sure that you're getting every single thing you can get out of it, because there aren't a lot of dollars flying around. When they are, you've got to make sure that you're making it work. And it's sad to see people out of work, people going broke, and large and small businesses affected by it. But more the kind of psyche of the country, there's kind of real negativity to it. And now, what was it till we just hit our recent COVID recession, 26 years of unrequited growth in the economy. So a lot of young people have never even seen something like that.
Absolutely.
And now it's important that in this environment that we find ourselves in, because it's sort of like it's like an invisible assassin really out there. A lot of people would go, wow, 99.97% of all Victorians don't have COVID right now. And we've just locked everybody in their houses. And we recognise that we're doing that to get to the end, to not smash the hospital system and not have a lot of people, die and not have it run rampant through the country. But the economic fallout is massive. But more importantly, as we unpick this thing and the economy tries to get rolling and we try to get people back in work, there are going to be a lot of people who fall through the cracks. And I've been pushing really hard, and I've been sort of out on Instagram and other things talking about some of the mistakes that the government has made. And one of them is no support for visa staff, which is just a tragedy. When you build a higher education system in Australia that is funded and fueled off student visas, and you've got a hospitality and tourism industry that works in a skills shortage area and utilises amazing kids from overseas. And we're going to have a situation now where, because a lot of people have gone home and because a lot of people haven't been able to stay here, as we do reopen, we are going to have an incredible skill shortage here in Australia. But I thought it was very un-Australian not to give some support.
Yeah.
And I thought the cruelest of blows is we changed the Fair Work Act so that JobKeeper could work and so that stand-down orders could work effectively. And yet we didn't insert in the Immigration Act the fact that people on skills visas were attached to restaurants, if that restaurant closed down, could seek work elsewhere without breaking their visa.
Yeah.
So we literally are telling people, I'm sorry, you can't work. No, we won't give you any money, but no, you can't go over there and
do something else. Yeah.
No. And I had a situation where, two pastry chefs, Ben Shuri rang me up and said, Neil, my little takeaway business is busier than I ever thought. Have you got anyone who can make pastries for us, some cakes and things, because it's flying out the door? I said, oh man, we've got two of the best guys ever. And by the time I hung up, I then rang him straight back and I said, oh man, that they're on visa and you guys have to sort it out, but there's no way that you can
just take them. Yeah.
And for that to be the case just seems to me to be like cruel. So look, I'm hoping with Victoria being locked down now, stage 4, that the government might have some reflection on how they can change that situation, because it's really un-Australian and cruel.
Yeah, it's just such a weird time at the moment, with not just because it's everyone's taken out of their comfort zone, but more so there's so much information and misinformation about it.
Yeah.
You don't know what the hell you're going to read and what to believe, right? One report saying that it doesn't affect this and it does affect that, and then another. Yeah. It's just so much stuff out there.
Yeah.
And from the look of things, the World Health Organization has kind of been leading from the back.
Yeah.
One minute they're saying masks don't do anything, next minute they're saying masks do something, and it's just like every week it's something new.
Yeah. It seems bizarre, doesn't it? Because the evidence is out there that it doesn't do much for stopping you from getting the disease, but it does
absolutely
a lot to stop you from spreading it. And if you've got a situation where people are in the public domain and they've inadvertently got, they're asymptomatic or they're just getting the sniffle or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
If they've got a mask on and there's no aerosol.
Absolutely.
To me, it just seems like it should be, till we beat this thing, it should be mandated that, if you're in the public domain, you wear a mask. And I saw a 7:30 report with Dr. Swan 2 or 3 weeks ago. We were saying 2 beauticians had COVID and they didn't realise it. And in the time they had it, they served 132 customers, all of which got no COVID because they wore masks, but they infected their whole family. So
makes sense.
Makes sense, you know. So like in Victoria now, maybe
everyone just wears masks.
Yeah,
and
and maybe only 10% of the people who've got COVID would have got it.
Yeah,
crazy.
Let's go back to 1994. That was a big year for you.
Yeah.
You obviously finished your Rockpool book, which, by the way, is still one of the most essential cookbooks for anyone who loves food. And that's the same year your father passed away.
Yeah. And my daughter was born.
Your daughter was born. Yeah. Tell me about the.
Big things happening. It was fantastic to write the book, and kind of, I suppose, put a line in the sand of what Rockpool was about in that time, which was great, and really record, I suppose, the things that were important to me and the relationship between East and West in my life and how it affected my Rockpool cooking as well as the way they cook at home. Dad passing was very sad, and the family, it was really hard on Mum, particularly since my sister, her youngest, besides me, Leslie, was very sick at the time too with cancer. She died not long after that in 95, 96 actually. So Mum sort of took a big hit on that one, so she was sort of down and out. But I think, Josephine being born was really important for Mum because it gave her a real focus with Dad having passed away to kind of have this new little life. And I think it was important also that she was born in May and he died in October, and I think that time that they spent together was important. He was at the naming day and all that sort of stuff. And he got to his 80th birthday, and I think he really felt like he'd had enough.
Sure.
So in a way, it was a really upsetting time, but it was also happy because we realised he was out of pain and he had pretty bad cancer. And it puts me into another thing that I'm sort of fairly big on too, which is dying with dignity. And I think that we need to get laws changed, and we really need to have the ability for people to be given mercy, and also for families to come together and reconcile. My mother passed away in 2015, December, and she had dementia, and she had stage 4 melanoma, and she was riddled with it, so she wasn't coming back. And yet we just have to watch her die and get pumped up with morphine, and the whole family could have been around her bedside 4 weeks before that, and we could have all held her hand, and she was conscious and cognizant of what was going on. And instead, we all spent days sitting with her, basically like a junkie out of it. She'd shake every time she was sort of coming out of the morphine. And then to get a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning to say she passed away on the Saturday. I was there during the day, but I don't know. I just, having done that, I would never want to see any Australian or any other human actually go through that. And it's just, we've got to get more sensible at that. You wouldn't, if you had a cat or a dog, you wouldn't do it.
No,
So,
absolutely.
I think we've got to get much more focused on very humane way of end of life, particularly when your life's very limited.
Yeah, I think it's crazy that we haven't passed laws around that, especially if it's, the patients like, wanting terminal and wanting that too.
Yeah.
It's no one's choice really, but theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that you're actually just numbing the pain for however long it is. I mean, they essentially just starve them to death and
they end
dial up the painkiller.
And they look so gaunt and a really horrible way of going.
Yeah, and not being able to be with your entire family.
Absolutely.
But anyway, that's something we all have to jump onto.
Yeah, so that must have been a big year for you. I mean, you've had such wild emotions with your daughter being born, and then obviously your father passing away.
Yeah.
How did that affect your work?
I didn't really let it affect my work too much. I mean, I think with Josephine, it was super exciting, and of course you're kind of in it for the long run when the baby's born, and then it was really kind of making sure Mum was fine. With Dad, we really, we were kind of knowing that it was imminent over the last sort of 12 months of his life. I mean, he had cancer everywhere, and he'd finally gone, hey, I'm just about 80, I'm not going through more chemo and all that sort of stuff. So he got to the point where he just didn't want to be in any more, pain and suffering. Like, he was kind of a bit of a test guinea pig, and they were doing lots of different things. And I think he'd had one liver biopsy before, and they said, well, we're going to give you another one. And, he's had so much agony from it, he said, didn't want to know about it. So I think we just kind of buried ourselves in the work and just kept on going. So, it was emotional, but at the same time, we were really happy for, all the amazing years that we spent with him. And then really the fact that at the end it was not a great life for him, and he was ready. So I think if you get that opportunity to kind of reflect on what a great influence he'd been on me, and also what a kind of rich life that he'd lived. So and a lot easier to bear.
Yeah, absolutely. So, after a few more years, you embarked on some new ventures with, your cousin.
Yeah.
And you guys decided to open a few restaurants in around about 2000. And that's kind of when, things started to go a little bit pear-shaped for you.
It did. Again, kind of poor choices of locations, and look, a lot of it was fueled about having so many great chefs and managers and not wanting to lose them, because you can only have so many in one restaurant. So we continually wanted to grow to give them opportunities. But a couple of poor choices, and we kind of lost a bit of money. We were really sort of sitting there just before the Olympics on the MCA balcony, Trish and I having a coffee, and it was kind of that thing of we're a couple of $1 million in the red.
Couple of million.
Yeah, we could just go into receivership, or and for us it was really so many people that worked for us were our great friends and family, and so many of our suppliers, great friends and family, and so it was like we just can't give in, and we just can't throw them to the wolves along with whatever happens to us. So, we've kind of sold houses and apartments and funded ourselves a little bit longer along the way. And then the Olympics came around, and we were just so lucky there. We had the MCA, so the Australian Olympic Committee took out level 6, and we were catering. We were doing something in the Amex Hall for Amex. Rockpool was just doing insane business, and we had a set menu at a crazy price, and we were taking in a day what we'd take in a week almost.
Yeah, sure.
And Rockpool at the time down in Darling Harbour was right in the centre of where the games were at the convention centre, and so it was just insane. So I think we we made about $1 million in that 2 weeks, and between selling property, making the $1 million, and then really cash flow funding, the rest of the year coming into Christmas, because it was September, October. Coming into Christmas, and we got in front of it. We got lucky. We got out of a couple of leases, and we came back, and right through that, Qantas was really important to us, as it has been right through until today. 23 years with them, and then really, it was sort of James Packer and John Alexander approached me and sort of said, "We'd really love you to do something in Melbourne, because we're completely redeveloping the casino, and we've sort of been winning. We've been in the top 50 restaurants for the last 5 or 6 years before the casino, before we went down and did Melbourne Crown. So we were the kind of, and I'd been doing a lot of TV with Foxtel, and so they were probably the 2 strongest brands in Australia at that time in food, with Tetsuya and Neil Perry, Rockpool.
Yeah.
So they worked really hard to get us down there, and we went down, and really, the rest is history with Bar and Grills and Spice Temple Rosetta.
Yeah, I mean, you said you sold properties. Did I? I think I read that
Trish had a house and I had an apartment. So yeah,
was that? That must have hurt. Something that you've worked and.
Yeah, I think you have to put yourself in the frame of mind of your business is everything, and you've got to commit to whatever you've got to do to save it, sort of thing. So.
Because most people would have just gone down that route of, let's liquidate, let's start again.
Well, yeah, I just don't think particularly Trish and I, our personalities would never be like that. I don't think we'd ever be able to face our friends and family again, because they're, as I said, suppliers and staff, and the whole notion of doing that is just so against our, probably our biggest trait is loyalty. So that would have just run in the face of that completely.
And of course that year you got married again.
No, I met Sam. I got married in 2003.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do some really bad maths then.
We met in 2000.
Yeah.
We started going out in January, and then we ended up getting married in 2003.
Okay. Was I think I read somewhere that you had 3 marriages in the past.
You have, yeah.
That must have been, like this industry. It's hard to keep relationships and to keep a good balance between your home and work.
It's almost impossible if you want to succeed, because you've got to just put so much heart and soul into it, and so many hours. I end up, I sort of suffer a lot with back and shoulder and neck pain, and so, because I don't have very much disc on C6 or L5, but that's really sort of just working 2 lifetimes in one. And so you've got to do that, and then it does. Home life does suffer, and it's also, there's a lot of pressure on all the time. So it doesn't make it easy. So that's why in the industry I think it's incredibly volatile a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, you said once that by the end of there's not a lot left of you once you get home. And that, I can totally relate with that, obviously, because I was in the same industry. You're doing essentially 80 to 100 hour weeks as a normal week.
Well, it's physically exhausting. Is the issue. So you're going to need a bit of downtime, and it's hard when you get home and then everyone's at you. So trying to find that balance is important, but it's often very difficult.
Did you have any ways of dealing with that? Like, I know a lot of chefs, they do a lot of cocaine or a lot of booze.
Well, yeah. I mean, I drink a lot of good wine. I'm too old to do drugs now. That was more about my younger days.
Yeah.
But look, recreational drugs and alcohol are definitely part of the industry. I mean, it's part of the industry anyway when you're serving food and alcohol. But most of us sort of try to get away from being functioning alcoholics. But there are a few of us that are.
Yeah.
I sometimes have a few days where I have a break from alcohol. It sort of proves to me that I'm not an alcoholic. Otherwise, I always drink a good bottle of wine every day.
Yeah. At the moment, I do a bit of advisory work for some, restaurateurs and some people who are trying to get into the business. But, I've always said to people like, and people don't realize how difficult it actually is. They give up their day jobs and they say, I'm going to open up a little restaurant or cafe or whatnot. And, you just don't realize the hours that you have to put in, physical and mental, because after the physical day is over, then you have the paperwork afterwards.
The red tape and all the stuff you've got to do now is insane.
Yeah.
The regulations within the industry, and it's fine for a restaurant as big as Rockpool Bar and Grill and so forth, because at the end of the day, the gamble's worth it because it's a big restaurant, turns over a lot of money, it can be very profitable.
Absolutely.
The ground's the same with that scale and volume, but you take a lot of small cafes and restaurants in neighbourhoods and suburbs. I mean, you're really working hard just to get to the point where you break even and beyond. And then the upside isn't, outrageously up. So
no,
if you do it,
it's just a wage.
Even if you're kicking goals, you're only just surviving.
Yeah. It's and on top of that, you have to deal with people like, and I'm sure you've experienced this much more so before than now, but in terms of fearing a reviewer, like someone like Leo coming in, or someone like Terry coming in, and now it's the social media, and it's just so hard to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, the only really good thing about all that stuff now is it's so disseminated everywhere that I don't think anyone's got any power. So
absolutely, and I think it's a good thing too.
Yeah, so it actually allows you to kind of get on and do what you do, and the reality of it is, you've just got to do, what you're doing, what you believe in. And not deviate too much from that. I very rarely read social media on my restaurants, and I never read reviews on bookings and so forth, because it's just so varied and wild. It's hard to drop everything out and know what you're doing. I mean, I rather make a decision talking to a customer in the restaurant who's got a complaint or loves it or whatever it may be, but you can either fix it or you can talk about it or you can see where your shortcomings are, but sort of reading that stuff online just breaks your heart. So if you do that, you'll be an emotional wreck.
And a lot of people do, a lot of people take that stuff personally, and it's hurtful because obviously they, you just don't know the restaurateur side of the story. And
it's like, every time you read one, it's like, no, guess what? I didn't set out to have a really shit time for you, and I didn't want the waiter to call you an arsehole, and I didn't. That's not part of my training program. It's like, and then they start out like, I've been to great restaurants all around the world. It's like,
good for you. Yeah. Did it? Around that time, I think you lost. It was the first time you lost a hat, no?
2000. The third one went. Yeah.
Did that bother you much, or was that something that you?
It actually bothered the whole community in Sydney more than it bothered me. I was most upset for my team because the guys were working, really hard. If you've got a 3-hat restaurant or a 3-star restaurant, you're really putting a tremendous amount of energy into it, and the guys working their ass off for it, and not thinking they've done anything different today than they did, yesterday. So I think for me, I was really gutted for the staff because they were just beside themselves. And look, I felt sorry for Terry because there was a lot of backlash and stuff went on, and Terry and Jill actually went and left and travelled to London and set up in London for a while. But we got our third hat back within the next year and had for another 6 or 7 years and lost it. But, got it back. So, I mean, I think it's just one of those things where we just focus really, really strongly on doing the best we can today, and then tomorrow we try harder. And I think that philosophy sort of always keeps us fresh and keeps us working, towards being better. It's sort of a very Japanese philosophy, but if you see a guy, it's a sashimi chef for 70 years, they're trying just as hard to do it perfectly at the 70th year.
Of course.
At the beginning. So I always talk to the guys a lot about that, about making sure that, nothing's ever mundane. You're always thinking about how you can do it better.
Yeah.
Because you never completely resolve that skill.
That's a really good way of looking at things. And not a lot of people do that. A lot of people just set and forget.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, the amount of times someone goes, I've been making pasta for 5 weeks, chef. And so we'll make it for another 4 months and you'll be fine. It's like you just have to be able to do something until it's just so ingrained. Cooking is just really, it's about a craft-based skill. It's about doing it again and again in every different kind of environment that you can do it. And then you can make real decisions because you've got all this information in your head that you can fall back on. So it really is developing that skill and understanding of the product you're using, the fire, the pasta, the flour, all the various things that make the elements that make up what you're doing. And it's so important to continually think about how you can get that little bit more out of it every day.
Yeah, that's another one of the issues that we face in the modern now is that the younger generation coming up, and I'm not saying I'm not part of the younger generation, but people my age and below who are just getting into hospitality, they want everything so quickly. And it's all instant gratification. It's what's next? I've already done this. What's next? And no one really takes time to perfect something or really understand something before they move on.
Look, I think the sad thing about the world is I'm just not sure if the word artisan will probably disappear in the next 20 years. You kind of wonder who are the people who are going to perfect a craft and continue to work at it. It is very disposable. I sort of have this hope that because of COVID and because of the outrageous amount of money we're all losing, or most of us are losing, I sort of hope that people reflect on this whole consumerism around the world and start to think about, do I really need sort of 35 different outfits? Do I really need to sort of churn and burn, disposable clothes when I can buy something really good that's going to be with me for
a while?
Yeah, I mean, this old Prada jacket that I bought in New York in 2000 is still hanging in there and worth every cent that I paid for it, and I love wearing it, and I take it to the grave with me, hopefully. So about investing in things, but not just disposable, me kind of consumable thing, and people start to go, maybe I could actually help somebody else if I put a little bit of energy into this sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Or maybe I could volunteer and help feed people or help clothe people or do all the sorts of things that are going to be really needed. I mean, we're not really seeing yet the fruits of this virus when it comes out of sometime next year, and we think we got to the other end of it. It'll be really interesting to see where unemployment is, where consumer confidence is, where the economy is. It's not going to be a pretty sight.
Yeah, that's it does make you think. We as a society, leading right up to when COVID happened, we were so wanting the latest and the newest, I remember growing up not being able to afford shoes. You get one pair of shoes, and if the sole falls out, you know what? You re-glue the sole.
Yeah.
You go buy. and that childhood, where I grew up in China, in Yunnan province, really taught me to buy something of quality once, and you don't need to replace it all the time. And I think that's been lost a lot.
It's terrible. And look at all the fast fashion brands around the world where it's the expectation is they're going to fall apart anyway, and the kids are just buy them, and it's almost like wear them a couple of times and you throw it away and off you go, and it's just so counterproductive. And if you look, like yourself, when you grew up in the 50s and 60s in Australia, it's like, you had your school uniform and you had a couple of shirts and you had a couple of pairs of pants and a pair of jeans and one pair of shoes outside of your school shoes, and that's exactly what you had. And so, you just learned to do things and get by, and, you did your homework and then you went out in the backyard and you didn't do anything about, you weren't watching TV or, you were playing with your mates and rock climbing or playing cricket or playing football or riding bikes and now kids are just obsessed with phones.
Just the screen and...
it's terrible.
So, we've now moved on to the 2000s. In 2015, obviously, you had a falling out with your old business partner, David Doyle.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And, that would have been a period where you, having had such certainty with your partner, and all of a sudden that's now not there anymore. What was that like? Was that?
Look, I think our relationship had been breaking down for quite a while, so it wasn't all of a sudden.
Sure.
And David wanted to sell the building, which he kind of negotiated to do, and he did, and made an awful lot of money out of that. And then part of that was, let's see if we can sell the business or get you out of it or whatever.
Sure.
Right at that time, I was in the right frame of mind, I guess, and Quadrant made an offer for the business. And, it was a fantastic offer, a once-in-a-lifetime situation. And so, we ended up selling and still partners, and still shareholder in the business, which is great. All of my fantastic staff all the key staff are still there, and gives them the next opportunity to come out and,
do something else.
Corey and he's the chef at Bar and Grill, and Paul Eason down in Rosetta in Melbourne, and Richard and Rosetta here in Sydney, and Andy Evans in Spice Temple. I mean, all these guys have been with me for a really long time, and they're fantastic chefs in their own right, and they deserve to come out and get in a bit more of the limelight and help drive the business to the next level. But it was really fortuitous in a way, because I got to kind of monetize all my efforts and energies that I put into the business. So
that must have been, something of like, after all these years to say, hey, this is all your hard work over the last 40 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that I really liked about it is it valued restaurants, and I think that that's still the case. I love to see it going to the right owners when we get out of COVID, we get reopened and we're functioning, because, as I said, brilliant staff there and brilliant restaurants. Because again, I come from an industry that I helped build, and so I really love the fact that I've helped give value to it, and then hopefully give heart to other restaurateurs that they can build a great business and has a value, and they're valued, and banks should support and give the appropriate amount of support for a business to thrive.
Did after running such a lifetime of your own career for the majority of it, now you have to sort of report to someone else. Was that difficult, or was that weird to get used to?
Sorry. Look, probably not ideal for me, because I'm used to kind of making my own decisions. So
it would drive me insane.
Yeah, so it's sort of been difficult. One of the reasons I decided to step away from the business, stay as a shareholder, but step away from the day-to-day running, is that, Tom's very smart, and Jonathan, he's our CEO, and Jonathan, our chairman from Quadrant's incredibly smart guy. And those guys are 10 times better at business than I'll ever be. So it's great for them to be able to make decisions and drive the business in a direction that I'm not trying to jump in the middle of. So, but I think the most important thing is I'm just very excited and proud of all of my kids, as I call them, having the opportunity to take the next step and be that much more important to the business. So it's great for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, I just couldn't imagine, that you, after such a long time to do things for yourself, and then all of a sudden you have to go, okay.
Well, it's a good learning curve, that's for sure. So again, I've sort of spent 3 years learning a lot about the things, and the guys run the business really well, and there's some fantastic systems that they have in place. So all of those things are great learning curves. So
absolutely. And 2019 was another sort of up and down year for you. Obviously, your daughter got engaged.
Yeah,
and
that was good.
and then,
not being able to get married because of COVID, that was bad.
Sure.
Yeah.
And around about the same time, obviously, the reports were starting to come out with, the Rockpool group with the wage theft and the industrial wage scandal, as you want to call it. I mean, that must have been really... That must have annoyed you a lot because, number one, all through this interview, chat, you've always, and also from what you've done in your past, you've always given care to people, and you value relationships a lot, and you always wanted to look after your staff and all the people that make that industry, right? And because the group was the name, Rockpool Group. Yeah. But the actual businesses, I don't believe it was the businesses that you helped to build, but just because the group was the name, well, I mean, your name got tarnished.
Yeah, well, I think it's sort of a lot of, it was, media coming after a private equity group owning restaurants, but all Quadrant have ever done really is put, fantastic expensive systems in that make it easier and easier for staff to be accountable for every second that they work. So it was very unfair from their perspective, and I thought really unfair from mine because, there are certain traditional parts of the industry, particularly in premium, where people do work very hard. Look, it's often very difficult to interpret the award with breaks and how many hours one can work and so forth. And I'm not sort of just saying that it's a cop-out because it's not. It just is much more complicated than most people think to run the award. And look, we made mistakes around breaks and various things, but it was good because I kind of feel that because of my profile, and again, it was a bit like when I sold to Quadrant and helped monetize the industry to a certain extent, because people saw that, the media were coming down on me and Fairwork was investigating me. I think it made everybody in the industry go, whoa, okay, we better get our house in order. And, chefs work a lot less in Australia now than what they did a year and a half ago, that's for sure, 2 years ago. So I've kind of helped, lead the industry into a better place. Then that's great because we really want to make sure that staff can grow and thrive and have balance in their life and do things like that. So, sometimes, you get to be the poster boy, but then, Woolworths and
7-Eleven.
Yeah, Woolworths, 7-Eleven. I thought, one of the law firms that was chasing us, Morris Blackburn, they underpaid their staff by $1 million, and I'm sure it's much more than that.
Sure.
If you were to go into those poor article clerks that work however many hours they work.
Yeah, and all the law firms and anyone in office. Yeah. It's just like there's no... what annoys me about this whole thing is that I think the restaurant industry, for some reason, has been more targeted than other industries, right? Yeah. Because, you speak to anyone who works in an office. When have you not gotten out
Well, done a little bit of overtime.
Done a bit of overtime and unpaid, right? So,
plus you want to get ahead, right? So you want to show the boss that
that's right.
Or you want to learn. You've got to leave here and go to Noma and work sort of 6 days a week, lunch and dinner every day, and learn to cook now because you're not allowed to do it in Australia. So
yeah, it's incredible. I remember when I was, young, trying to learn how about coffee and things like that. I offered many businesses and many people that I wanted to learn off. Hey, I'll come and work for free.
Yeah,
that just doesn't happen nowadays.
No, you're not allowed to do it. So.
Yeah,
but staging in Europe is an important part of people getting through the industry and growing. So
absolutely, and the thing that what I found with this whole situation with the Fair Work and putting you up as essentially the bad guy here is that during COVID you've launched Hope Delivery, which essentially helps all the visa holders and anyone who doesn't have the support of the government. But I don't hear one fucking word from anyone, right?
Yeah.
About how we can support the 457 visa holders or the temporary workers.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, how some of those guys who are chasing so hard in the media, all of a sudden they don't want to take the government on for doing something which I think is a mistake. I mean, I think they didn't have to be at JobKeeper level, didn't have to be at job seeker level, but it had to be something. And I think importantly, there's a lot of media that have let that slide.
But where's the campaign about helping them now?
Yeah, they're not.
But they're happy to just skewer you when it suits them, right? So,
there's nothing like a good headline, right?
Oh, totally. That's stuff like that really, doesn't sit well with me because, someone like yourself worked really hard all through their careers to try and create, benefit to the community. And you just get tarnished with this brush, even though it's not your own doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, you have to take the good with the bad sometimes. So it's what comes along with the profile, I suppose. You're open to interpretations.
Do you find it surprising the people who've come out to support you at that time, and actually maybe surprising the opposite of the people who you thought would support you?
I've been pretty lucky. I mean, most people have come out with pretty strong support, which has been great.
Even your own staff created a campaign.
Oh yeah, I know. It was awesome. They were so great, the guys. So it was just one of those things where it's really gratifying to know that you live your life the right way and you're always trying to support the staff and give them opportunities and help them to grow, that it comes back at you. So I think one of the great things is Hope Delivery was really born out of having those guys there saying how can we help, what can we do, and then having the foundation. So in essence it's really been gratifying to see the guys chip in and volunteer and do all that sort of stuff. But their support through everything that I've done right through my career has been fantastic. So they're the sort of cornerstone of which I've really built everything as my amazing staff.
Tell me about earlier this year you wanted to buy back some of your top your top restaurants.
Yeah.
What was the thought behind that?
Well, there was just an opportunity. I think Jonathan and Tom had been talking, and they sort of really thought, look, premiums do a certain thing, and the casuals do a certain thing, and it's easier potentially to maybe split them. So they had the conversation with me, and I sort of said, yeah, well, look, we're really interested in doing that. We got to the point where we almost did it, and then of course COVID came along, and now it's very difficult to do anything other than survive, which we've done brilliantly. And now just really focus on one by one reopening restaurants, and I'm sure both Jonathan and Tom felt that we'd be a lot further ahead at the moment, given we probably thought at the beginning of June, as restrictions were coming down in New South Wales and they were being met by Victoria, and Queensland started, and we started opening restaurants in New South Wales. Then we got Victoria open, and then of course we're open for 2 weeks, and we're just about to open Spice Temple. So I think we would have had all of our Melbourne restaurants open by now, and the same in New South Wales. We probably thought we would be a little ahead of where we are in confidence. The last 2 weeks have knocked the confidence out of the ballpark a little bit. So now it's just really like, how do we get back to having all the restaurants open and being fully functional, and then what decisions can be made. I think I pretty much decided during this time that I needed to focus on other things, and home delivery is one of them. So I hope to take that idea and charity that it is, and turn it into something that's really important. Hopefully not just feeding people, but also helping support producers, and then most importantly talking to people about positivity and how we can all help each other, and via bringing people in volunteering, because it gives them a focus on the day, a focus on the week, a focus on the month. But also importantly, maybe talking about programs that we might be able to run through it, and other things that can just help people's well-being and mental health, and reskilling, and all the sorts of things that we might be able to do to help the economy gain some momentum.
Absolutely. I think it's a really good thing that you're doing for these guys who are less fortunate. And I know personally a lot of the guys who've gone back overseas because they couldn't survive. They love the country, and they have family here. And they couldn't stay. And it's
so sad. And when we all reopen, we're going to have a skills shortage because these people have gone home, and it's crazy.
And finally, retirement.
Well, it sort of looks more like I'm a shareholder in a business. I'm working really hard to kind of improve the profiles of these amazing people who I've kind of sat on top of. So it's been really easy for everybody to go, oh, it's just Neil. But of course it's not. It's, it's Corey and Santi and Tom and all those guys at Rockpool, and Shruti and Pastry, and Andy and his great team. So I my job now is to get those guys up above the sight line, so everybody can see how important they are, what great people and what great cooks and restaurateurs and sommeliers and so forth they are. And then to get to the point where we've got a real focus on where Hope's going and what we can do with it. We're really keen to get back working really strongly with Qantas again when we get flying back, and we just love to get domestic back, and then potentially get international happening. And I think Trish and I we'll do very much like yourself, do some consulting, and we've got a couple of people who've approached us on some various things. So do some consulting on setting up kitchens, setting up bars and training and all the sort of things that we're kind of experts at. And she just runs, outstanding financial models that are so easy for people to understand and adhere to. So, we will put together things like that. So, we'll see. I might end up in a restaurant one day, but at the moment I'm just focusing on what's ahead.
Thank you so much for coming on here. Pleasure. And sharing some of this stuff with the audience. And you've been obviously to a lot of people an inspiration for the Australian food and hospitality scene. I know that you certainly are one of mine when I first got into the business. I just want to ask a couple of personal questions with how do you enjoy a meal out with your family, because everyone will be shitting themselves.
No, I'm pretty real. I mean, I actually eat in my own restaurants a lot, but when I go out, I try to support all the young guys cooking around town. I mean, they're all, I think, have either worked for me or friends, and we kind of respect each other.
Sure.
And I always try to be as relaxed as I possibly can. So, eating and drinking is my kind of relief. It's my pastime. I don't want to get uptight. I'm really happy when people are serving me, beautiful food. They're always looking after me, and I try to make them as relaxed as I possibly can. And most of them, have cooked for me quite a few times, so they know. But I try to relax, try not to focus on what's going on around me too much, because I get too wound up in whether it's right or wrong or whatever. And it's just I just love to see other people give hospitality, and I love to be relaxed and eating beautiful food, drinking beautiful wine in someone else's restaurant.
Yeah, and you don't have to clean up after.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, like, you said once that you don't get invited to a lot of friends for dinner because it never occurred to me because obviously you don't think about stuff like that, but it makes sense, for your friends to also not be, wanting to invite you for a dinner party.
Yeah. No, I don't get invited for dinner at all.
You hear that? Neil's friends start inviting him.
Exactly. Matter of fact, Alan Joyce and Shane, his partner and husband, because they had the most fantastic wedding at the Museum of Contemporary Art last year. It was awesome. But they invited us over for dinner just recently, and Shane just cooked the most beautiful meal. I was so happy. We did a lovely Japanese meal, and we drank sake, and they made beautiful cocktails. And it's such a pleasure to see somebody go to such brilliant effort, but also just to cook really beautifully. It was a fantastic meal, great hospitality. We probably overdid it on the sake, but...
you can never overdo it on sake. Never.
I think we might have. No, maybe it was the cocktails. But it was really lovely because it was, again, just a wonderful experience to go to someone's house and have them cook for you.
That's such a strange thing to hear, that you don't get invited to dinner parties.
No, I do a lot of cooking at home.
Yeah, as you would. No, thank you very much. And, for anyone wanting to visit and support some of Neil's places, you can visit Rockpool.
Rockpool Bar and Grill, Spice Temple. Rosetta will be open soon, hopefully. Fingers crossed Melbourne's open by October. And if you want to donate to Hope Delivery, go to Rockpool Foundation website and click on every $2 fee gives one meal. So, we're very efficient at making food.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I really do want people to go onto the website and, support that cause, because you're the only one doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, no, I appreciate that.
Okay, Jack.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you.